Pathfinding, Day Mapping, and Catching What's in Reach. So the photo, if you're looking at the card, relates to a practical way to navigate your pathway through a chaotic world. I have a poor natural sense of direction, yet ordinary map and compass skills allow me to function as a wilderness guide. In the photo, you'll see me leading a small group through a maze of canyons with no marked paths in Escalante, Utah. Orienteering is a simple but effective method of wilderness navigation. You orient your map to the visible landscape as best you can, recognizing that the map is not the territory. Some features may have changed, and others may have been mapped wrong, but most things will correspond. With the help of a compass, you locate a nearby landmark along your line of travel. You walk to that landmark, reorient briefly, and pick a new landmark. This is called point-to-point navigation. And that allowed me to function for years as a wilderness guide, even though I have a terrible sense of direction naturally. That was also an autobiography, I believe, named titled Point-to-Point Navigation by Gore Vidal, because it's a great metaphor for an effective way to get through life. And this card is going to be a longer video. I'm combining two cards into it, but it's also what I call equipment for living. That was actually a phrase somebody used as a definition for stories as equipment for living. It's what my sci-fi epic Parallel Journeys is also meant to be, but it is emphatically not what so much dreary postmodernist literature is about, which is often nihilistic and very poor equipment for living. But there's no more important equipment for living that I can offer than what's in this video, because it's about something we have to deal with every day, which is how to get through each day to have a fulfilling and ethical life. Pathfinding through life can be like finding your way through a maze of desert canyons. First, you must know the overall direction you want to go. If you don't already know your overall direction, you need to locate it with deep global intuition. And this is a crucial psychic function that works like your soul's compass. And it's something that to make use of the rest of the card, you need to have first, really. It's something that people often come with me. I do free dream interpretation and oracle readings at festivals and some public events. And I think because I'm somebody who's so magnetized by a sense of my life mission, people who lack that will come to me looking for that answer. But unfortunately, I can best help people with problems that I've struggled with myself. That's one particular problem I have not had, because my life is unusual in having high thematic continuity across all parts of it. And so there's always been this implicit life mission. However, what I do know about that, you can probably find best in another video or written essay called The Path of Numinous, Living and Working with the Creative Muse. And the idea is you need to find something that's numinous, something that lights up as having an uncanny significance for you. And that can help you to find your overall direction. And there's another suggestion for finding that direction I'll have in a moment. But you need to access that deep global intuition to find it. The mind and the ego are indispensable psychic functions, but they won't cut it with finding that key factor or for choosing key relationships. If you try to use them as your soul's compass, you will likely find yourself in a mental ping pong game. But what about this? But what about that? But what if this happens? But what if that happens? Some people try and choose relationships this way. They'll go through like personal dating apps and stuff, and they'll be like, but this one is taller, but this one likes candlelit dinners, but this, like they as if it were something they could use the merchant mind, which could be good for comparing refrigerators, but not for soulmates. So if you find yourself in that kind of mental ping pong game, you're not accessing a deep enough psychic function. You can't think your way through to your overall direction in life because thinking doesn't plumb the depths of your soul and life purpose. One way to contact the necessary depth of recognition is to go to a quiet, solitary space and ask yourself the question mentioned throughout this oracle: what will you remember well on your deathbed? Your honest answers to this core question will reveal your what Aleister Crowley called your true will, the life mission basically you need to accomplish. Once you've located your intended life direction, the mind-ego alliance can step in to handle the micro level of path orientation. Now, I'll say one more thing about life purpose. People in the 60s would sometimes go out, I want to go out and find the meaning of life. But some have said, that's getting the question wrong. It's a life that asks you what your meaning is, and you have to supply the answer. Now, for some people, like myself, seem to be almost born with that life mission. Like, there'll be a kid who, as soon as he can crawl, will go to the nearest musical instrument and start working with it, and it's obvious that their life mission involves music. Other people may not have this blessing. They may have more to choose a life mission. And there, you can look for the two great sources of meaning in any life that people who have near-death experiences will most commonly come back and talk about the same two great interrelated purposes in life, which are, one, to evolve, to grow, to develop yourself. And then the other is to help other people, which can be with that, if you're going to be a spiritual teacher or something like that, or to help them with anything, working in a soup kitchen, whatever. But those are the two intrinsic sources of meaning in life for just about everyone, unless maybe you're, even if you're a math nerd, you're doing math, it still has social extension. It's there to help other mathematicians. You wouldn't be a mathematician if you weren't standing on the shoulder of previous mathematicians. So even that is more socially oriented than it might look from the outside. And so the secret of life is really not a mystery, because people who've plumbed the depths have pretty much all come back and said the same thing. It's about developing yourself and about helping others. So, once you've located this intended life direction, after this, I'm going to assume that you have, then the mind-ego alliance can step in to handle the micro level of path orientation. But you could still apply this. If you don't have your life direction, you can, decide you're going to put aside an hour a day to journal and to work on that while you take care of all the practical parts of your life, because whatever your life mission is, you need to keep yourself healthy. And, this is a golden age for the two intrinsic life purposes. If you think about earlier times, the best educated people during the Dark Ages were a few European monks who had the good fortune to live in a monastery that, in rare cases, had as many as 100 books. But anybody with a phone has got access to more valuable cultural content, if you don't look for the junk, than they could consume in 10,000 lifetimes. And so the opportunities for self-development in this era have never been more auspicious. And last time I checked, the world is not running out of people that could use help. So please don't tell me that you can't find meaning in life. It's there. You just have to start working with it. The start of the day is often ideal for path orientation. A natural unit of time lies before you, and you have a goal to make the best use of your time, consistent with your overall direction between awakening and bedtime. Locate navigational landmarks in space-time to orient yourself efficiently. For example, if you have a doctor's appointment today, That's a navigational beacon, a definite point in both time and space you need to hit because maintaining your health is consistent with your overall life direction. I mean, unless your goal is suicide, right? You also need to get to other points in space and time for work, creative sessions, exercise, practical chores, and quality relationship time, or whatever your particular major goals are. But for most of us, it will include all of those, except that some people their life isn't oriented toward creative sessions. Orient your day map to navigate time and space efficiently. For example, if you need to get something from a store that's near the doctor's appointment, it would be efficient to go there right before or after. It's also efficient to bulk similar tasks together. For example, if there are a few small home repairs needed, you might as well do them together, as once you've gotten yourself into mechanical repair mode, it's easier to stay in that mode. It's most efficient to do things during the peak time to do them. For example, I'm at my peak cognitively about 90 minutes after I've gotten up and had my daily dose of caffeine. So that's when I start my writing and creative sessions almost every day. And really, the only exceptions would be some emergency or sometimes when I'm traveling and I'm at a festival where it's so important to get out there and do readings and dream interpretation for people. That's kind of my creative session that goes on all day. And so I'll prioritize that. Otherwise, and even when I'm traveling from my Sprinter van, which is set up in the back to be like a writing lab, I start the day with the creative session. And that doesn't take willpower because that's the thing that's the most fun and that I most want to do. In the afternoon, I have the most active physical energy during the day. Now, I probably would have had it 90 minutes into the day, but I'm not going to sacrifice my creative session for exercise. But after that's over, and I'm also have a lot of pent up physical energy because I've been sitting for hours during the writing session, which is what I was doing before I started recording this. And so that afternoon time for me, that's the peak time to take on physical chores like cleaning the house. But it's also peak time for exercise. So I have a difficult choice between which of those to prioritize. What I've been doing is prioritizing chores and other practical tasks while I've got that willpower and active energy, and then to do exercise after. But that usually diminishes the intensity of the workout. If I can get to the workout earlier in the day, I can do a much more intense workout. So it's a difficult trade-off. And this is what life is constantly presenting us with, is difficult trade-offs. And as the wisest words I've ever heard, Deng Ming Dao said, never underestimate the value of a partial solution. By doing anything, it's at the cost of everything else I could be doing with that time. But we just have to kind of work with that and make sure we're doing something that is useful and consistent with our life mission. And we can orient ourselves for our point-to-point orientation by stopping and asking ourselves, what's the best use of my time right now? When you can control your time. Obviously, if you're at work, you may not be able to. Off-peak time is peak time for off-peak tasks. For example, on an afternoon when I'm feeling physically under par and or mood challenged and or having an issue that's causing some emotional, psychological instability, and that's fairly often, to be honest. Well, that's the perfect time to do necessary but cognitively unchallenging tasks that produce concrete results like the laundry. I save such tasks for those under par zones when doing simple physical work will actually be therapeutic. So that's one of my ways now. Other times, if this psychological, emotional turmoil were serious enough, I'm not going to try and self-medicate it or workaholic it away. I'll sit down with a journal and like my journal writing the whole time and like really delving into what's going on. But other times I've kind of already done that, but I'm still mood challenged, energy challenged, health challenged, whatever. And so I won't try and do something that's really difficult during that time. It's enough if I can do simpler tasks. It's which I also kind of enjoy for reasons I'll explain in a bit. It's ideal to reserve peak time for work on a big dream that's crucial to your life path. A good rule of thumb is that a big dream needs at least 2 hours a day. You're not going to be good at, if you want, your goal is to be a great guitarist, you should be practicing the guitar at least 2 hours a day. And, uh, fill in the blank with whatever the big dream is. It's hard to imagine your dream isn't very big if it requires less than 2 hours work a day. The work on your big dream is important, but may not be urgent in a superficial temporal sense, like hitting the doctor's appointment at a specific time or answering a ringing phone. Without a good day map, most people default to the superficially urgent small stuff and neglect the important non-urgent work. In time management literature, this is called majoring in the minors. When you draw up your day map, gauge time as realistically as possible. Like many people, I have an unhelpful tendency to estimate how long I think something should take as compared to how long it usually takes, and that's about 2 to 3 times as long as I think it should. So you want to add some buffer time between any scheduled tasks to avoid the stress of rushing or falling behind and thinking you're a loser because you couldn't get done stuff that you'd have to be Superman to get done in a single day. I do this to myself all the time. I'll list like 12 urgent things I want to get done today, and I can probably only do 5 of those, or maybe 4. Since I'm self-employed at the moment, at this life phase, my schedule is more flexible than when I was in school or working rigidly scheduled jobs. And so one of the practices I do, by the way, is I like to see what I've accomplished during the day, how much I've exercised, just kind of like know where the day has gone, because you can get to the end of the day and like, where did it go? And that can be demoralizing. So I'll use voice to text on a memo on my phone and just record certain key time markers. And then I have a friend who's doing that, and we'll share those as a voice recording that we can send to each other. So it doesn't take much time. If you have to write everything down, sometimes in the past, and sometimes it's worked well, I would have like this huge check sheet, kind of thing, or template of like, how much time for the creative session, the exercise parameters, and so on. But it gets very tedious to write things down. So if you can take advantage of voice to text and make it as easy as possible, it's good if you can finish the day seeing your day map and seeing what patterns you can learn from it. You can then, review the day maps of the week and be like, I always overestimate what I can do, or I tend to push exercise too late in the day when I can't do it so well, and so on. But I feel for people who have scheduled jobs, because that makes, which was most of my life too, because that makes this all so much more difficult, but not impossible. So, because I get my writing session, creative session, done at the start of the day before I do anything else, it reduces the chances that unexpected events will interfere. People close to me know not to disturb me during that time. I defend my peak time for my peak activity. So people in my household know, do not communicate to me before 1 p.m. unless the house is on fire or something like that. When I'm finished, the sense of accomplishment for having completed the creative session, my highest value activity raises morale for the rest of the day. Most days after my creative session, I'm using myself as an example. I'm not saying do what I do. This is to give you an idea about grounded in an example of how you apply these general principles that you can apply to your very different situation. But most days after my creative session, then I have to tackle mundane, mechanically resistant tasks. But I employ a few strategies and tactics for dealing with this part of everyday life. One is conceptual. And this might sound silly, but instead of calling mundane tasks to-do items, I call them quest links. Now, that might sound over the top, but what it does, because naming things is, big part of magic, right? To spell meant literally to spell out words. So giving things the right names gives you power over them or through them or with them. By calling these items I have to do, even if it's vacuuming, calling them quest links reminds me that necessary practical tasks are in service of my life mission, my quest. Okay, I'm not going to be able to fulfill my quest, which involves creating this kind of content, if my house is a total wreck, if I haven't paid the water bill, and this kind of thing. So all these mundane things are still in service of my overall mission priority. Similarly, for many people, their life mission is relationships. If they're a parent, the highest thing in their life mission may be raising their kids. Well, that quest involves a million mundane things, but that are absolutely, they say love is a verb rather than a noun. That means changing diapers. It means all the many almost infinite tasks and responsibilities of parenting are quest links. The Fellowship of the Ring, Lord of the Rings, probably seen the movies, if not read the books. Well, the Fellowship of the Ring has a quest that will drastically affect Middle-earth's fate. In the books and films, however, we observe the quest during its most dramatic moments, when they're being attacked by ring wraiths or whatever. But if we watch the Fellowship moment by moment, we get a few glimpses of this, we'd find that most of the time, they were dealing with mundane activities like gathering firewood and wearily plodding along the path while being oppressed by weather and biting insects. And yet, even in those conditions, meaningfulness was still present because they were on their quest and they were doing things that furthered the quest. Therefore, gathering firewood was a quest link. Changing the diapers of your children, babies that you love, are quest links. If what you need to do is too much to allow for big dream time, relationship time, self-care time, etc., then it's time to triage your projects and activities. What can you afford to let go? What can you absolutely not let go? What might fall in some middle category? It is better to accomplish some important things really well, plus a modest amount of mechanical chores, than to be in a frantic rush all day trying to accomplish everything you should be able to do, usually based on what a superhero could do after 12 cups of coffee. Mark out your day map with majors and a modest number of minors. Now, an exception to this is like emergency survival situations where you're under, if you're in Ukraine, then like you may not have time for self-care because it's a war-torn place. You may not have time for your big dream. Maybe all you can do to like keep yourself and your kids alive, or situations like that. But most of the time, we're not in that kind of a situation, and unless it's an emergency, you need to be finding time for quality relationships, your big dream, and these other kinds of things that easily get pushed out of the day. I often look forward to doing routine mechanical tasks because most of my reading is done via audiobooks. I also use routine task time to listen to podcasts and catch up on world events via quality news sources. I'm not saying everybody should do that. Some people find more peace through mindfulness, meditation, of activities where they're just focusing on the task itself. But I would feel my mind was not getting enough cultural impressions if I were doing that all the time. But when I was doing wilderness adventures, I wasn't listening to headphones. I was, just being present with the wind and the rain and what needed to be done. And that was its own fulfillment. You can also make mechanical tasks a chance to get into flow state. And there's a link there on the card, but you can look up what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi called flow very easily. And you can make the most mundane tasks this kind of flow state by treating these activities like a game or sport where you're trying to push the limits of performance and efficiency. So just a brief aside on the flow state, it's when you're doing something that's challenging, but within a skill set you already have, so you don't feel like you're just spazzing out on it. Like if you're a skilled rock climber, you're going to be in the flow state. You can't be thinking about anything else while you're doing it. It's so demanding, but you have a set of skills to apply to it. And now your ordinary sense of the passage of time is lifted because you're so wrapped up in what you're doing. And when Mihai Csikszentmihalyi tested a bunch of people from all walks of lives to see who could get into flow best, one of the people that had the best access to it was an Hispanic guy who worked in a factory that assembled motion picture projectors. And what he did was he approached it like an Olympic event where the thing that he had to do in the assembly line took the average person like 3.5 minutes. And he kept focusing on his every little movement and how to make it more efficient until he could get it down to 1.5 minutes. And then he kind of reached a plateau with that. So it was no longer as great of a challenge. So he asked for another position on the assembly line and then started that process again. And he said he loved his job and before he knew it, the day was over. So Gurdjieff once said he could train anybody to be conscious if they could do anything really well, even if it was only making coffee. So because once you've learned those skills of excellence and flow, you can apply them to almost anything by really concentrating on it to the best of your ability and not just be kind of lazily half in, half out when doing things. The mundane tasks I dread the most and am most likely to procrastinate on lack intrinsic interest, yet require mental focus, like doing the taxes. My psyche cringes from the claustrophobic narrow reality tunnel required. Most of the pain, however, is something I feel when I'm not doing those tasks because I'm just like the monkeys on my back. Oh, I didn't get around to doing the taxes yet. And it's just there kind of draining vitality. And I would be better off in most cases if I could get to those things sooner and get them off my back. But I have a lot of trouble doing that because I don't have enthusiasm for them. But once I overcome the resistance and actually start doing those things, I get focused and efficient, and then I build momentum, and pretty soon I'm in the flow state doing those things. So once I can finally get myself into, make the titanic effort to get myself into paperwork mode, then that's peak time, and I might as well burn through as many paperwork tasks as I can while I'm in that mode. And afterward, there's a high sense of accomplishment. But also, here's a very key thing to keep in mind with stuff like that is don't wait to be motivated to do things. And there's research on this. Just do the things, and in doing them, the motivation comes after and during. Okay, so don't feel you have to feel like doing something or be motivated, or you won't get far in life. Your state of mind as you draw up your day map is essential. Don't let the map drawing exercise become a futile attempt to tightly pre-structure the future. The map is not the territory, and the landscape of the day will likely have unseen and unpredictable features. Drawing your day map is a strategic activity you engage in the moment, but future developments may require you to redraw it. For example, earlier today, when I was revising this card and writing, I learned that the other 4 members plus a house guest in my household would be gone from the house for several hours, or at least that's what they told me. And since my 2 teenage godsons are off from school for the summer, so there's almost never a time now when somebody's not home. This is a valuable opportunity for me to do things that require solo house time. So I redrew my day map to record this card video and some other card videos while the house is quiet. It takes time for me to get the lights set up and the camera angle right, and so on. Then as soon as I got all that set up, because the day is always throwing you curveballs, several hours turned out to only be 3 hours. I had built a model in my mind. When they said several hours, I'm thinking like 7 or 8 hours. They're gone for the whole day. But this is also like what gets, in general, and I talk about this more in the survival card, what causes people to be victims rather than survivors is they build inaccurate maps in their mind. Well, in this case, several to me sounded like 7 or 8. It was actually 3. And so now people are home, and pretty much the moment I finally overcame all the technical glitches I was having and was ready to record the card, suddenly 5 people are walking into the house. So, but I had already set up. So it was another curveball. I hadn't intended to record videos. When they told me they were going to leave the house for several hours, I decided I better do it. But then, and this is just the typical thing we all go through, then it turns out they're coming home the same moment I'm going to record the cards. And then one of my godsons is going to be having friends over for a big D&D session. He's a dungeon master, and that's really loud. So that's the time marker of when I better get this done. But I'm rolling with it, and I decided, okay, I put in all the time to get this set up. It's not a recording studio. Maybe there'll be extra noise. I asked people in the house. We cooperate well with each other. Okay, try and be a little quieter, because I'm recording now, and so far they're cooperating. So, and then I came up with a plan that after I did the videos, because again, I created this false mental map that people are going to be gone all day. I didn't know where they were going, that I was going to tackle all the unopened mail and paperwork because I could spread it out on the dining room table without inconveniencing anybody, and I'd have like the quiet to focus on it. But that's not going to get done now. And also that was based on my idea that I could get 12 things done today, which I can't. I wouldn't have had time for it anyway, even if they weren't coming home by the time I'm done with the recordings. So this is the kind of moment-by-moment adaptation one needs to have, and you have to have accurate maps, and so the maps need to be constantly redrawn based on these curveball events that we're always going to get hit by. Now, when I was writing my sci-fi epic Parallel Journeys, it was absolutely ideal for me to get up pre-dawn. Emerging from the dream time when the rest of the household was still in it created a liminal zone closer to the dream time. I'm awakening from dreams, and I'm further from mundane consciousness. On the other hand, if I sleep late, I have to pass through a house bustling with morning routines as people get ready for school and work to get to my study. And this is kind of demoralizing, and it's more distracting, and it like breaks into, because if I were waking up pre-dawn, I would already like be in the scene I was going to write and be thinking about it. But if instead everybody is in their getting ready to commute to work or school mode, the psychic noise of that and the physical noise of it can distract me. But I've kind of like made my study as sound resistant as possible. And like once I'm inside of it, it's kind of its own little world with strange lighting and things. And as you can see, I've set it up for this Zen minimalist look so that nothing can distract me here. But but it's harder. But you have to keep rolling with the changes life throws at you. So late in my older years now, 66, there it is, right there. People say I could pass for a 63-year-old that hasn't slept in a couple of days. I hope that's true, but no age denialism here. I am using some age advancing filters, so I'm actually look much younger than I do in the videos, but that's another story. Anyway, here I am later in life. I've no more. I have more wisdom to put in these cards, but now I've got I have more. I used to sleep. I used to be like a superpower. I could like sleep instantly and like sleep really efficiently. Like my dad, I was like a genetic short sleeper. I only needed like 5.5 hours sleep a day. But in recent years, sleep quality goes down with age. I've had more insomnia, and my way of a temporary partial solution for dealing with the insomnia in the last few months is staying up later. By staying up later, I seem to have less insomnia, but now I don't get that cool pre-dawn writing zone. But I'm also not working on parallel journeys, so it's not as disastrous. But if I decide to write the sequel, I have a 10,000 word synopsis in a couple of years, then I'm going to really see what I can do to get back into that pre-dawn zone if I can. So again, we constantly have to adapt our life rhythms and day maps to the real world conditions we're faced with. Okay, you can see something I wrote, I linked it here, called Pre-Dawn Window Zone, about that, why the pre-dawn zone is so magical. Many successful people who have 9-to-5 jobs will choose to get up early to create some peak time before they get to work, when the phone is ringing and they're being called to meetings and all that kind of stuff. They may use that undeserved peak time for high-level thinking on the projects they're working on, or use it for exercise before they get to work, or maybe there's a gym at work if they work for Google or someplace like that. And there's a book about this called, I put a link there, what the most successful people do before breakfast or something like that. And it was one of my adaptations when I was a school teacher and had to get to school like at 8 a.m. I would try to get up really early to write first. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. When you draw up your day map, don't do it with the relentless efficiency of the commander of a Nazi panzer division. Don't make the day into a death march. Leave space for self-care, relationships, and to unwind before sleep. So you don't want to fall into this workaholic, too hard on yourself mode of like, and I do this. I'll make a list of like the 12 things I've got to get done today when I never get done 12 big things. You will function better if you can stabilize your sleep schedule. There's ever more research on how crucial sleep is to our functioning cognitively, longevity, everything related to our health. I have a loose time marker for when I want to get to sleep, and I have apps on my phone that remind me. And in the past, recent past, if I could get to sleep before 9:30 p.m., I would often be able to get up by 4 a.m. and or even earlier. But if I stay up past 11 p.m. like I'm doing now, I need more like 7.5 hours of sleep, during or being in bed, during which maybe I got 6.5 hours. There are cycles with sleep and dreaming, and every hour of sleep before midnight may be worth 2 after. If I catch the right cycle, I can get in my REM sleep earlier and have a higher percentage of REM sleep. And I always have gotten always felt that I got an abnormally high percentage of REM sleep. Maybe this is because I have a high dream recall because I work with dreams. But when I went twice to real sleep labs where they've got 30 something electrodes on your head and stuff, um, they were able to, they pointed it out to me like, whoa, you get a much higher percentage than most people do of REM sleep. Since REM sleep tends to happen at the end of the sleep cycle, usually in the early hours of the morning, it is particularly exhausting to stay up late and then wake up to an early alarm that truncates REM sleep. So this sleep issue I'm having now, it's part of a general um, pathfinding day mapping strategy that we have to work with where we are in our own life cycle as well as the day cycle. Like a Mary Renault character said, man must make his peace with his seasons or the gods will laugh at him or her. So, if I were 95 years old, I would probably have to spend most of my day like with self-care and not be able to get as much done as I can now. So right now I'm kind of in a golden zone of creativity in my life where I'm not so hampered by aging. I'm probably unusually healthy for my age, but I work at that with diet and 90-minute cardio workouts most days. But still, 66 is 66. I'm not. I've lost my superpower of like super efficient sleep. So that takes time out of the day. So I have to work with that. I can't pretend that I can do everything that I could do when I was a marathon runner, a mountain climber, and this kind of thing. But overall, especially because now I don't have to work a scheduled job, I'm getting much more done than I could when I was more physically fit, but had to work a scheduled job and was more easily distracted and didn't know everything that I know now. Often we find ourselves faced with a classic problem. Our body is a more conservative organism than our psyche is. What is good for the body is like what's good for a cat or dog, a consistent, predictable routine. So, we have a dog, he gets fed around the same time every day, and that's very healthy for him. He has an advantage we don't have because, he would like to be getting treats throughout the day, but then he would be fat and unhealthy. And, but since we control his diet, an advantage you and I don't have because we have to control that for ourselves, he's very, very fit. And so that's very good for his body. But it's not as fun for him, as like on his birthday when he can get like treats throughout the day. So there needs to be a careful negotiation and choice because sometimes the spontaneous social or creative opportunity is worth even staying up all night. Maybe I'm like having such a fantastic time with friends at a festival. It's such a great social experience. It's worth it to throw off my sleep schedule because this is the psyche and the body can diverge. The body is more conservative, right? The psyche needs variety. I can't, I have this pretty stable routine of like writing first and then I do this and then and before I even write I'm like have a whole set of things I've got to do to get my body online, stretch first and then the whole body vibration machine and then this, that, and the other thing, then make the tea and so on. And after about 2.5 months of that, I'm just sick of that routine. I got a lot done, but now it's time for me to do a road trip. And 25% of the year, I live out of my Sprinter van and I'm traveling. And I need that because it's like the stable routine. It's like the Dylan lyric, he who's not busy being born is busy dying. The psyche becomes stagnant if everything is routinized, even though that's better for the body. So you got this, again, you have a trade-off situation and you need to work out the best partial solution. I'll be home and I'll dial in that physical equilibrium for my health. I'm doing my cardio workouts every day. I multitask them. I've got a professional quality elliptical trainer and I have it set up in my home theater. So that's pretty much the only time I'm watching movies and shows. So it makes it super enthusiastic. I don't have to go to a gym and undress and dress and undress and shower, it's just right there. It's one of the most fun things. I get like a runner's high even at this age from doing it. But when I'm on the road, it's not as good for my body. Cardio wise, because I might be walking more, but I'm not getting in the intense cardio I get when I'm home and I have the elliptical trainer. On the other hand, I find that like a lot of my problems, like my insomnia and my back issues, actually are less when I'm traveling because my body seems to like go into adventure mode. And to be like, okay, we can't be so fussy about our little symptoms and stuff. And like, it just seems to cooperate with the situation. And like, I often sleep better out of the Sprinter van than when I'm at home and I have an adjustable bed and all that kind of stuff. So go figure. Again, partial solutions, constantly adapting to new parts of the day and new parts of where you are in the life cycle. So sometimes it's worth it for me to throw off my sleep schedule because there's such a valuable social opportunity or adventure or whatever. But much more often, I get the greatest fulfillment by not doing that and being able to get in the creative session. So for example, I've had experiences where I was at Burning Man and everything looks so magical and it's wonderful. But at the same time, I was feeling the anti-magical sense of like losing those creative sessions because I worked so hard to get to Burning Man. It was better for me to get out there and start doing the free dream interpretation and oracle readings or going to some cool events or whatever than to get in the creative sessions. So being at home is better for writing, better for cardio and some aspects of my physical health. But it would start to be bad for my physical health and my writing because that depends on my imagination and my not being stagnant if I weren't taking out a lot of time to travel. But once I break the sleep rhythm, it could take me days to get it back. So again, it's got to really be justified. Anyway, once you've prepared your day map, taking all these things into consideration, you start moving toward your navigational points. It is most efficient to have your day map and a list-making device, such as a smartphone, we all have them, within hand's reach throughout the day. If you, people, oh, that's terrible. I don't want to be around my phone all day long. Well, just put it in airplane mode. Okay, you don't have to be plugged in. You don't have to be interrupted, but you still have the list making device. For some people would do it with like pieces of paper and stuff. I used to try and do that and I'd always lose the piece of paper. I'm much less likely to lose the phone, and it keeps it all organized with the various apps and so forth. Anyway, however you want to do it, you need to have a list making device to be effective in life. If you need to, quest links and future time markers should be listed or calendarized immediately when you think of them so you don't fatigue and worry yourself by trying to retain them in memory. Nearly everyone these days has a smartphone in their pocket, so this has never been easier. Outsource mundane memory to your phone or whatever the thing is. There's something called a Gibsonian affordance where you outsource memory to the environment. Like an example is if you know it's going to rain the next day, but you might forget your umbrella, if you lean the umbrella against the inside of the front door, you can't forget it. That way you don't have to exhaust working memory, but like, I've got to remember to bring the umbrella. I've got to remember to bring the umbrella. That's like walking down the path carrying a stone in your hand. Um, if you can outsource your memory to technology or the environment, maybe you have a dry erase board at home where you write things down, whatever it is, don't you think of something that needs to get done or that needs to happen at a certain time, record it immediately. Finally, be path-oriented, not goal-oriented. And when I said finally, I probably shouldn't have because there's some other stuff past that finally. So don't demoralize yourself by continually checking for progress on your long-term goals. Now, I'll do this. I'll look for like how many people are, buying parallel journeys. Not many so far, but it's actually grown this month. But that's not a great focus for me because I don't need to track that past a certain point. It's going to be what it's going to be. I'll make some reasonable efforts to market it. I'm giving out laminated bookmarks that advertise the book all the time and so forth. But I also need to let it go because I'm not in control of what other people want to read. And what is available every day is the creative sessions. And I found that the demoralizing, reality I sometimes face of not as many people finding my work as I would like. And my creative career operates at a 6-figure loss. But it doesn't actually interfere with my relationship to the creative muse. And every 10 days or so, I'll get like a 6-paragraph email from someone like really appreciating the Oracle or parallel journeys. So it's reaching some people. So it's much more valuable for me to focus on what I can do creatively today than to try and track, how many people are actually accessing my work. Never as much as I want, but so what? If they're the right people, quality is more important than quantity. And obviously, if you're listening to this, you're one of those people. So you want to focus on the part of the path you're on at this moment. Another great concept that Stephen Covey came up with is the circle of concern, and then the much smaller circle inside of it, the circle of influence. So how many people are reading my book? That's in the circle of concern. Moment by moment, I can't control that. If you want to listen to Parallel Journeys, and I think that's the best way to get it, the Audible version, read by me, that's a 28-hour and 10-minute time commitment. And this is an attention economy, and it's very hard to get people's attention for 1 minute, let alone 28 hours and 30 minutes. So I'm not in control of that. But inside my circle of influence, where I should be working, is like what I'm doing right now, recording the card. What's in my circle of influence right now? I am. My voice performance, my staying on task, and all that kind of stuff. That's much more useful. That's where the rubber meets the road, and it's much more useful than my focusing on the future. And if anybody will listen to this video, as you are now, that's all in my circle of concern. I can't directly affect it. It would be a future event. So stay focused on where you are in the path right now, where you're at the dead center of your circle of influence, and then use point-to-point navigation to get to the next point. And traveling to the next point is also like where the rubber meets the road. I am traveling to the next point, which will be to record another video, by recording this video. So if at any point in your day you feel off kilter and feel like, what's going on? Why am I doing this? Stop, take a couple of deep breaths, reorient yourself by asking yourself the question, what's the best use of my time right now? And this is assuming you have control over your time. In some situations, obviously, you don't. And that answer could be a nap. It could be time off for contemplation. It could be hammering away at minors. It could be working on a neglected major, etc. If the answers aren't what you're currently doing, take a few moments to reconfigure your day map and then get busy doing that. So now I'm going to include the text of the card, catching what's in reach, because it's so related. Often we are so mesmerized by long-term goals, by what is presently unavailable, by the past, and by what is out of reach, the stuff in the circle of concern, that we fail to notice or act on things within our reach right now. Each day is like a stream flowing from awakening to bedtime. If you're not fully awake and engaged, the stream can flow by you before you even notice. This may be what's happening to older people who say the years just fly by. Nobody's heard me say that. I experience a very high time density because, this is a whole nother time theory. Maybe I'll get into it a little bit. I'm making intense use. I'm really engaged with my life. I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not looking for detachment. I'm looking for engagement. And I'm very engaged in what I'm doing right now. And that slows down time in a good way, not in the sense that time is dragging, but in a sense that time is so intense and meaningful that there's a lot of time density. When I think back to what I was doing 10 days ago when I was on a small road trip, that seems like a lifetime ago. So the years don't fly by for me. I'll quickly get into the time theory. Probably, I'm sure others have thought of the same thing. So I might have just reinvented the wheel, but you can find it in something I wrote called Time, Tolkien, and the Elves on the website. I use motion picture technology. Like this is a Bell and Howell IMO. It's the smallest 35 millimeter movie camera ever made. So I just happen to have a motion picture camera right behind my head. I didn't realize that would be so meaningful, but now it does seem meaningful. So the reason why the silent films look so herky-jerky and like people were speeding through time is because they can only manage like 14 frames per second, and I think you need 17 FPS or frames per second to make it look lifelike. If you want slow motion, like with sports replay, then maybe you need 60 to 80 frames per second, and then to play it back at 17 frames per second and slow it down. So if we could slow down time in the good way, where it doesn't feel like it's just flying by and you don't know where it went, if any of us were to travel to a country we've never been to tonight and wake up the next morning and it's a new place, as exotically different from the place of origin as possible, where everything smells different, tastes different, the people are different, the sights are different, the climate is different. Now that first day in that new place is going to go by really slow, not in the sense of time dragging, but in the sense of you're being so engaged and engrossed that there'll be a high time density. A lot is going to happen. The film and the camera is going faster. The frame rate increases as there are more units of perception per second. Similarly, if somebody were coming at me with a knife, adrenaline would raise my body temperature to 104 degrees in a fraction of a second, and time would slow down because the frame rate would increase with all that intensity going on inside me as I was trying to calculate intuitively my survival actions and this kind of thing. So when I go on road trips, when I'm living the routinized life at the house, time will start to, and one day is like another, it starts to get too stagnant. And then I will go into completely different time mode by getting on the road. And now I'm sleeping in a different place every night often. And, there are new sights and new things to adapt to. And it shifts my relationship to time. Some people go to tropical islands to get into the tropical time, which happens because in a tropical environment, the difference in temperature between internal body temperature and the outside environment is lessened. So it's kind of erotic because you don't need to wear as many clothes. You're immersed in an environment that's close to your own internal temperature as compared to like being in a freezing place where you have to put on several coats and stuff like that, several layers. Every day stream has tiny windows of opportunity. The chance for a few seconds of pleasant conversation with a store clerk. This is the kind of thing that when people have life reviews and a near-death experience, they'll discover that this brief conversation they had with a store clerk was actually a highly significant event. That 15-minute chunk of time before you have to get to the next appointment, where you could just be listlessly watching TikTok reels, or you could be reading a book that you're reading on Kindle on your phone and getting something more worthwhile out of that 15-minute chunk while you're waiting for the doctor appointment or whatever. That listless half hour in the evening, which you could fritter away channel surfing or web surfing, or spend soulfully calling a friend you haven't conversed with in a year, or writing in your journal. Coming down the day stream are the endless flotsam and jetsam of potential distractions, but amidst the debris are some things of great value if we could reach for them in time. Sometimes we're so caught up in what is lacking in our life that we fail to notice things within our reach during this day stream. To grasp them, we have to be alert, and our timing needs to be just right. Most days there are some high-value things I'm trying to reach for. The morning writing session, 90 minutes for the cardio exercise, high-quality relationship time, time for high-quality reading and or watching movies or documentaries. On a day off, this was first written when I had a scheduled job, I could get all 4 of these in. But on working days, I might be able to get only 3 out of the 4. On a busy day, I might get in only 2 of 4. So for example, today I'm not working a job. It's 4:36 p.m. I'm still doing my creative session because I told you what happened. I thought the house would be quiet. I'm doing the videos anyway. Now that I'm doing them, I might as well do the other 3 that are waiting to get done. Then there'll be time for food, exercise, at most, maybe 1 or 2 other chores. But tomorrow I've got a big social day planned. I will have time to do my writing session first. Then I'm meeting up with my closest friend. We're going to eat a meal and see a new IMAX movie that just came out. And that'll be a really high quality, soulful social experience. For me, I try for one-on-one social experiences because then I can relate at depth. I'm not a group social person for the most part. But tomorrow I won't expect to get any practical chores done. That's okay because I probably won't have time for quality social today, but I will tomorrow. And so it's important that I prioritize that when that's available. And today I'm prioritizing other things. But if I kept prioritizing writing and creative and neglecting quality social experiences for the next 5 days, I would feel way out of balance, and that would not be good. So, as you approach your day stream, know what your 3 or 4 high-value things are. You know the scheduled stuff like work at the job has to happen. You know that opportunities for distraction will be flowing all around you. But if you time things just right, you could get in 3 of the 4 instead of 2 of the 4. Consider this an auspicious time to focus on your day stream with alert engagement and catch what's in reach.